you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
For many people, third-party Legends collecting is quite simple. You select a company, you stick with it, you get everything in their nice little scale and their nice little aesthetic, and that's pretty much it. For me though, it's a much more complicated affair. I like getting into the nitty-gritty, seeing the niche expand, seeing it evolve. What's the story behind it? How does each company do business? This often involves going after certain one-off releases, where companies dabbled in certain things but never quite stuck with it. A lot of these are pretty forgettable, they're just kind of mediocre attempts to try and capitalize on the success of third-party Legends, but they don't really get what it's for. But sometimes they turn out really, really well. Sometimes we do get hidden gems. And of all the companies to do so, I didn't expect Fansproject to do that. I think this time I might start off with the robot mode. I know I don't usually do that, but the gun mode doesn't have much functionality outside of just being a gun. Since most people watching this probably won't have the Fansproject Bruticus release thanks to all the other Bruticus we've got over the years. But I'm going to be judging this as its own figure, and as its own figure, my god, this is a looker. The design is covered in head to toe with that extra special third-party detail. It's got that third-party stylization, and it's done it in a really unique and clever way. It's angular in some places, yet blocky in others. It's just a really good aesthetic, especially at the size. Head sculpt is perfect. It's got a bit of a War for Cybertron aesthetic going on, but it also comes into its own, and they even managed to get the nice long earpieces, the nice long ear spikes, despite the fact, again, this is a tiny figure. The midriff's got some really good detail that appears better on camera than it does in person, but it still works either way, and man, that pink chest, oh god, that is great. It's not clear, but at this size I wouldn't expect it to be. Also pretty neat that they've got some green highlights on the shoulders. Not really something they had to do, but it's something that's pretty neat regardless. The arms are nice and chunky, and I think the aesthetic of having the scope as the arm works pretty well. It's not something you often see on Shockwaves, but I wouldn't mind it being seen later on. And the feet, ooh, they're so chunky. They've got lots and lots of layers to them. Personally, I like my Shockwave chunkier than most when it comes to the legs, because then it gives them a utilitarian vibe. It's the kind of scientist who would go out and do his own research instead of just staying in a lab the whole time. The articulation is also really great on them. I mean, I guess I better get into the articulation proper. Head is on a ball joint, which works really well and is really expressive. Ball joints on the shoulders, and they rotate pretty well. The only limitation is really this one, because it can't go back thanks to that tiny bit of back kibble there. Yeah, they got the handle, and it's not ideal, but at the size, what are you going to do? And bring up the sign again. Although I suppose going down to the ball jointed elbows on both sides, that does bring up my biggest gripe with this figure. It's kind of minor, but it's pretty annoying. The ball joint loves to pop off, and I can't really think of a way to fix that, because thickening it will probably make it worse, and sanding down the ball joint will probably make it fall off constantly, but well, it is what it is. Ball joints have pretty much as much range as you'd want in any direction, and he's even got thigh swivels. Given the age of this figure, that's really surprising. They really wanted to go all out with this. And you got a nice 90-degree knee, and that's pretty much a lot, but it's all you need. It's way more than you'd want at this size. Despite its size, it has a lot of posability, something I was not expecting. And it looks amazing too, and it's made with really solid plastic. None of that third-party shit that was quite prevalent in the era. And in case you don't believe me on the size, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard core class figure that doesn't even fit in the frame, a standard War for Cybertron Micromaster, and of course Crumbs. And for sizing, if you include the backpack protrusion, he's about 4.7 centimeters wide and 7 centimeters tall, including the ear spikes. The transformation is actually really unique. It's not one I've often seen on a Shockwave before. In fact, I've never seen it on a Shockwave before. I haven't actually seen another gun transformer do this in general, so it's pretty good for what it is. The head just rotates down to the side. It doesn't really do much, which is unfortunate, but understandable. The legs extend like so, and these little gun bits pop out like that. You rotate them around, and the whole thing pegs together like that. It's a bit hollow in the middle, but you know, I can hold up the sign for that, especially since this is a really tiny Legends figure. Anyway, you bring this section down. I'm not really a fan of these kind of struts here, but it does the job. They're pretty solid for what they are. Rotate the arm around, and that's just going to stay angled like that. Push this in via the fist so that these bits, when they come out, they line up properly. This bit untabs from the back and rotates around, and that kind of fits in there. That's why it's angled. It all looks pretty neat there. This section rotates around 180 degrees, and you don't rotate rotate it around so that the scope is facing back there, because there's actually a tab that fits into, but of course that keeps popping out, which is very annoying. Damn ball joints, why you gotta do that? But yeah, once everything's nice and solid, it works. And yes, you do have to deal with the head at the back there, but it does a good job. Now, I can't really show any of the bots holding it because it's got a very specific tab system. It's not particularly designed to be held by existing Transformers. It's designed to be held by the Bruticus and nothing else. And I do kind of get that. It's an upgrade kit first and foremost and a Legends kit second. But even so, it's a really cool gun mode. It's surprisingly clean for what it does. Like, from both sides, it looks pretty cohesive, even with the chest and the head sitting there. The way the feet fold up into the cannon, oh, it's just such a cool aesthetic. And the green detail over there, it's a really, really nice design. I kind of wish there was an adapter to plug it into regular Hasbro Chug figures. I mean, Perfect Effects did that, despite the fact that they had their own adapters to do their own stuff. They still had 5mm pegs there. Would have been cool if this was a standalone figure. It might have even boosted the sales of it a bit. But I still think it's fairly worth it on its own. I know that there are much more dedicated Shockwaves on the market designed to be Legends figures first and foremost. And I know a lot of people will just look at this and say, why the f would I even bother? But I think this is one of the most unique third-party Legends figures I've ever come across. It doesn't really scale with anything, and it doesn't really work in gun mode with anything. But to be fair, the New Age version doesn't connect with anything in gun mode either. But even so, I think this is a worthy pickup, provided you can get it on the cheap. I think I paid about $10 on this from TF Source before TF Source went to shit. And I'm pretty happy with what I paid. I wouldn't overpay for this because it's not a particularly rare figure, but overall, it's a pretty fantastic pickup regardless. And one I would highly recommend, even ignoring the year it came out in. Like, by modern standards, it's still pretty damn good. And I had more fun with it than the New Age version. Not to say the New Age version is bad, it's just this is really, really fun. This isn't a figure that's going to scale with anything. It might scale with some Legion figures, but Legends, not really. Technically counting as an upgrade kit of all things, and this is technically an upgrade kit. But he doesn't have to be. As a novelty piece, he does insanely well. The articulation is there, the paint is there, the sculpt is amazing, the stylization is amazing, and the alt mode is unique, not something I've seen on a Shockwave before. Much like Iron Factory when they first started out, this works better as a third-party Legends figure than it does as an upgrade kit. If you're into this design and just want him on the shelf without anyone else, or just want him as a desk toy, he'll do just fine. Yep, some bits kind of fall off. For example, I think I've left the gun at home, which is why I was holding him weird, so bits do fall off due to poor tolerances, but for the most part, it's a pretty damn good figure. Wasn't particularly rare, and I don't think anyone wants it these days, so you shouldn't have to pay a fortune. And because of that, I don't think you should have much trouble. So that is an example of what happens when a third-party company knocks it out of the park when they don't really expect to. But what happens when they do expect to knock it out of the park, but don't put the effort in? Well, tomorrow we're doing another full review, tackling one of the first ever third-party Legends Optimus Primes on the market. But just because it's one of the first doesn't mean it's a pioneer, because this one has some issues.